On today's episode, I want to talk about some of the new details and reports that have emerged following the NFL draft as to how in the world did Shedeur Sanders fall to round 5 and what was the cause of that. Now, before we look at that, help us reach 45,000 subscribers. We are less than 70 away. 65 of you watching that haven't subbed, help me out and click that subscribe button to reach a pretty sizable milestone of 45K. So we've got two draft stories. The big hitting item is Shedeur Sanders and how did he fall to round number 5. A lot of NFL insiders have spoken to people that worked in the NFL, work with teams, and have gotten some good insight as to what happened and how this all came to be. So let's start with an article from The Athletic's Dianna Russini, who talked to an NFL exec that said, I believe Shedeur approached these visits with teams as a recruiting trip versus a job interview. The rumor on the street is that the Giants had Shedeur Sanders number 1 on their draft board for a long time at quarterback. Joe Shane practically lived in Boulder, Colorado. And then, as we got closer to the draft, maybe Shedeur started to get cocky, I guess. Todd McShay, who does not bat 1,000, but he's very in the know when it comes to the NFL draft, with the Ringer said Shedeur didn't have a great interview with Brian Daboll in a private visit. An install package came in. Preparation wasn't there for it. Got called out on it. Didn't like that. Brian didn't appreciate him not liking it. This is kind of like the Bo Callahan story of you put $100 at the back of the playbook and they read all the way to the end here, and then they have the balls to lie about it. So Brian Daboll having an issue with Shedeur Sanders, and I think that type of stuff can really start to snowball when teams to begin with don't view you as a round 1 quarterback. They're going to go, wait a minute. We've got a backup who's being problematic? This is not something we really are interested in. Now, I don't know. I'm not here to say that this is all true. I'm just saying these are what some of the reports are for indicating how Shedeur Sanders fell to 5. That he was not going to go round 1. And so when teams were talking to him, he carried this persona of, I'm a starting quarterback. And they're like, well, in our eyes, you're a backup. And you're not really behaving like a backup. Which, hey, they could be wrong. Shedeur could end up being a starting quarterback in the league. But that's at least some way to make sense of how did this go all the way to round 5. Russini also added, the same exec added that he believes Sanders, who did not hire an agent, would have benefited from having one to provide a better level of insight into an understanding of the draft process. This is what I talked about on my Tuesday evening episode, that having Dianna as your agent was not a very good idea because no one was honest with Shedeur about where he was going to go in the draft. I do not subscribe or believe to this idea that there was this giant witch hunt to just keep Shedeur out of round 1 by all 32 teams. If a GM loved him and thought he'd be his future franchise quarterback, he would have been taken in round 1 or round 2. But it's not common for quarterbacks to go in round 2 to begin with. This year, only Tyler Shuck went. Last year, Will Levis. And before that, I really want to say you got to go back to who? Jalen Hurts. And that was in 2020. So it's been a while. But the point being is it's not common for quarterbacks to go in round 2. So once he slipped out of round 1, well, it's almost, I wouldn't say expected to then fall to round 3, but more likely than not, just given the history of the NFL draft. But if Shedeur had a real agent, I think that real agent then could have told him, hey, talking to a couple people in the know, I've been doing this for a long time. This is my 25th draft. I'm hearing you're a round 3 guy. And that might catch Shedeur off guard. Might piss him off a little bit. You know what it's probably going to do? Have him perform at the Pro Bowl. Have him throw at the Senior Bowl. And have him go and throw at the Combine. Have him maybe take some of these interviews more like job interviews than visits. Because I think he went into this thinking, I'm a round 1 pick. And when he wasn't taken in round 1, clearly shocked, but also probably wanted to redo a couple of things he did in the pre-draft process. And with an agent, that might have been avoidable. Colin Cowherd also added that when speaking with an NFL exec, If Shedeur doesn't go in the first 6 to 8 picks of the top of the second round, then people probably view him as a backup. Nobody wants a celebrity backup quarterback. I agree with Cowherd a little bit on this. And this is not fair to Shedeur Sanders. And this is where Shedeur and Dianna need to be separated. But if you're an NFL coach, you can either take, maybe in your eyes, a really good edge rusher, receiver, tackle, whatever it might be at like pick 45, at pick 50, okay? Or you can take Shedeur, and sure, if you hit on a quarterback, that's going to change the trajectory of your franchise. But if you, as a talent evaluator, don't view Shedeur as a very likely hit to be a starting quarterback in the league, and you think he is a backup with potential starting upside, well, that's not a bad thing to draft. There are lots of teams that take flyers on quarterbacks like that. You probably don't want that to then come with the overall, cloud of the star Shedeur Sanders, his entourage, and Deion Sanders. I'm not speaking from what I would do. I'm speaking from the lens of a coach and a GM, right? Those guys are football guys. They're no-nonsense guys. They're not there for the glitz, the glamour. They're there to win games. And they're probably not interested in having a backup who is going to have a big spotlight on them. And he's constantly having to answer questions about when is Shedeur going to play. They may feel that all of that baggage, fair to Shedeur or not, is not worth it for someone that they evaluated as a backup quarterback. If there was no baggage and they view him as a backup quarterback with potential upside, hey, in round 2, round 3, quarterback's so precious, it's probably worth the gamble. But is it precious enough to deal with the entourage if you don't view him as a starter to begin with? My suspicion is for all the teams that need a quarterback, which is not all 32, you might find very few GMs. And that's ultimately what happened. Also, this from Bruce Feldman, who spoke with an NFL assistant, that said, Shedeur's got a skill set, but no dominant trait. He's a backup at this point, and those guys have to be wired for humble support of the starter. This is an opportunity, and Shedeur's already taken this opportunity, I think kind of ran with it, to prove he can be a backup. He can hold a clipboard. He can be in last line because he's always been number one, right? From high school to Jackson State to Colorado, he's always been the starter, and that's usually the case for all players that get to the NFL. But how well do they take moving from the front of the line to the back of the line when they're a rookie? Some take it better than others. And then some kind of have temper tantrums and ultimately fizzle out of the NFL. But this is an opportunity for Shedeur to prove to the NFL assistant, I can be a backup. I'm happy to be a backup and, just sit and learn for a year or two. Not a problem with me over here. I'm not going to be having a hissy fit. I'm not going to be leaking stuff because I'm upset that I'm not starting. And I think Shedeur's done a very good job of showing he's capable of that, right? He's capable of being humble. Within 3 days of being drafted by the Browns, he is going to a Cleveland public school, speaking to children there. It's awesome to see. So that was the best day for the entire school year for those kids. So this is an opportunity, like I said, for Sanders to prove some of those naysayers wrong that, hey, I'm not just some Hollywood star. Like, I'm ready for the bitch work, the brunt work of being a backup, carrying helmets, doing rookie karaoke. I'm excited for that opportunity. I'm excited to, be last in line to begin with, but then prove myself and work my way up the depth chart. I'm not going to waltz in here thinking if I'm not the first quarterback up, I'm not playing. And I feel like too many people have said that's going to happen. And I don't think that's fair to Shedeur. Got to give him the opportunity first to say that's not the case here. If in 3-6 months that ends up being true, then they can take their victory lap. But I'm not going to come out right now and say, yeah, Shedeur's going to be a prima donna before he even gets on the field. That seems a bit, ahead of my skis. So between Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel, the two drafted quarterbacks for Cleveland, which one's going to have a longer career for the Browns? Give me Shedeur or Dillon in the comment section below. My money would be on Gabriel, and I feel that that's because the coaching staff views Gabriel higher. And that's a result of being a third-round draft pick. So a bit of a chalky response. well, I thought Shedeur was a better quarterback going into the pre-draft process. I'm not the one in charge. And I think Stefanski and Barry like Gabriel more. And it could take a little bit to move on from a day 2, day 1 drafted QB. They're going to get the benefit of the doubt. They're going to get a second and third chance. So I'll stick with Dillon Gabriel. The other draft story I wanted to talk about was how the Browns came to trading from number 2 to number 5 with the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Athletic put out a really insightful article about everything behind the scenes, so I want to share that with you all. But if you want to get your hands on a Browns rookie jersey like Mason Graham, who is now wearing 94, Quinshon Judkins, or Shedeur Sanders, go to chatsports.com/CLE rookies. I put that link in the comments and description of today's video. So if you want to support the channel while also getting yourself some more Browns gear, use this link down below. So the Browns pulled off some fireworks during round 1 of the NFL draft, trading back with the Jags, going from number 2 to number 5. And I want to share how this, originated and unfolded. Mike Silver wrote, the trade had been in place since April 7th, contingent upon quarterback Cam Ward going number 1, and was kept completely under wraps until draft day. So 2 thoughts from that. First thought is the fact the Browns wanted to wait to confirm the Titans were going to take Cam Ward tells me that the Browns weren't confident in the Titans to be absolute about Ward, which then signals that teams might not really view Ward as this slam dunk number 1 pick quarterback like most first overall selected quarterbacks are. So while everyone wanted Cam Ward, everyone that wanted a quarterback wanted Cam Ward, I was one of the few that said, hey, I don't think Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders or really this entire quarterback class is going to be all that great. I don't think Ward or Shedeur is going to get a second contract from their team. And I very well could be wrong, but that's just my gut opinion right now. The fact the Browns were like, hey, we're going to wait and see, make sure you actually do this, signals maybe the Browns think they're not going to do it because Cam Ward might not be that surefire of a quarterback for being the number 1 pick. So may not end up being the end of the world that the Browns did not get Cam Ward in this draft. Instead, they moved back and they get Mason Graham after passing on Travis Hunter. So let's talk about this because Andrew Berry, he got everyone excited for Hunter. We were all talking about whether or not he's going to play offense, defense. Oh, he's a receiver first. You're going to sprinkle him in a DB. And everyone was excited for the most electric player in college football last year, the Heisman winner, the unicorn, something we've never really seen in the NFL ranking, in the NFL world, to come to Cleveland. And then it all got swept out from beneath us. And I think what really snowballed it is everyone kind of got a case of blue balls after, getting ready for getting ready for Travis Hunter. And then you pivot from that to 5, and then everyone goes, okay, Ashton Genty. And then you go with Mason Graham, who's a very good player and a good pick. But it is hard to tell people, hey, instead of the unicorn and maybe the next Shohei Ohtani, what about a defensive tackle? Long term, that might be the best pick. But in the moment, that's not an easy sell. And then when you sprinkle in where that guy went to college, it's just the rotten cherry on top for a bad instant reaction. But give it a few days, and I think everyone has come around to the idea of, wait a minute. They can't double Miles and Mason. If Graham is going to push the pocket, meaning if Graham is going to force the quarterback to escape to the left or to the right and not climb up the pocket, Garrett's going to go from 16.5 sacks to 20 sacks. Because so many times Garrett gets around the edge, but lack of pressure from the interior allows the quarterback to step up and avoid 95. If he can't step up because Mason Graham is driving the center into the quarterback's lap, well, that means the quarterback either has to bail to the left or to the right. And if he's in a foot race with 95, he's losing that foot race 9 times out of 10. Yeah. So this is going to be a fun pick, I think, moving forward. But just instantly, it was a little bit of a tiny letdown here. Now, if you're still not on board with the trade, let's look at it one more time here, all right? And let me know if you'd still do this trade. I think a great way to answer this question is look at what the Browns got. Ignore the day 3 pick swaps for here. Let's look at the moneymakers. First for first, and then pick 36 and a future first to Cleveland. Ask yourself this question. Would you rather have Travis Hunter or Mason Graham and Quinshon Judkins? If you hesitate in your answer, then it's probably Mason Graham and Judkins. If you're unsure but leaning Travis Hunter, I didn't even mention a future first. Now, this trade's going to be contingent on Graham and Judkins playing well and Hunter not looking like the greatest player at the end of the draft the last couple of years and go both ways. But if you're like, I'm on the fence about it, I don't think you're on the fence about it. Because I haven't even mentioned next year's first they're getting from Jacksonville. We're just looking at the 2-for-1 difference right now of Graham and Judkins versus Travis Hunter. Once that third player enters the fray, and it's a first next year, Judkins and Graham versus Travis Hunter, I think everyone's going to come to the Browns side of things. So, while I understand why Jacksonville might feel the need to do this trade because they have just been an irrelevant franchise and a new young GM. By the way, these are two very young GMs pulling off this trade, Andrew Berry and Gladstone, the new Jags GM, whatever his name is. So let's wrap up today's episode by picking a card. Reed, which card do you want to go with?
Give me 8 of clubs.
I'm going to go with the 9 of diamonds. 7 of hearts. 7 of hearts. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll see everyone next time.